So millennial problem number one. So millennials are the largest generation at over 85 to 90 million people in the US and are the most educated generation in history. Now, while this sounds exciting, that with the supply of educated workers much higher than demand, it's creating the perfect storm for unemployment, underemployment, and a flat-out frustration beginning to millennials' careers.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's especially now that we're expected, for example, like we're expected to have a university education, and then you factor in the fact that women are now able to get an education and get jobs and are also expected to get jobs. Yeah. So now we have pretty much double the potential workforce that people 50 years ago, and that's not even to mention that we have, a rising population and all that stuff too.
Exactly.
So there's so much more competition, and you're seeing that everywhere, like especially where I'm from, like in Korea, for example, everyone's expected to go to university. Yeah. If you don't go to university, you're seen as, lower class, and you're seen as stupid or something. Yeah. But then what's gonna happen when every single person has a university education and expects to get a certain job?
Exactly. Well, I think this, and we look at like kind of our parents and even our grandparents' generation, is if somebody went to university, it was a rarity. It was more the kind of like, maybe not a rarity, but it was like fewer people in the family would go. And like, I remember my grandma saying, for example, so she was one of four, and her sister was like super, super intelligent, and they had her sister and two brothers. And her parents were like, well, no, the boys have to go to university. This is way back when, you know? And so,
totally,
and they could only afford, I think only one of them was able to go to university because, again, costs and whatever else, and they had to make sacrifices. But back in that day and age, it was like, if you did get a degree, you were one of the few. So obviously your job opportunities are all of a sudden that much more. Whereas you're right now, we're getting a workforce which is highly educated, which is a good thing. I mean, it's good to have people that are educated, but at the same time, the supply and amount of jobs that are out there, it just doesn't meet that. And again, it brings us back to that whole feeling of entitlement, because we're always told when we go through school, at least in Canada as well, like, go to university and you'll get a job. You know what I mean? Like, that's the whole thing. And then now it's happening that people are going to university, and guess what? They're not getting a job when they finish. And then there's that frustration.
And exactly. And like, I mean, of course, I don't know, is entitlement always bad? Of course, if you went to university, I feel like you kind of probably do feel entitled to get a job. Not entitled, but you know what I mean?
Like
that's the expectation. Exactly. And that is the expectation that society puts on you. Yeah. It's like, you go to university to get a good job. So if you can't get a good job, then you feel a bit cheated, and you feel like, okay, like, I just spent all this money. And can we just also talk about the fact that in the US especially, tuition fees are ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's already high. I think even in Canada, it's gotten a lot higher. Yeah. But, and I think in the UK it's like tripled.
It has tripled, yeah. Because when my first cousin went to university, it was £3,000 a year. And then a few years later, or I can't remember exactly how long, now it's £9,000 a year.
And I actually think it tripled over 1 year.
It did, yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Which is crazy.
It's insane.
And I just think that's insane. I don't understand. And then people are saying, this is why millennials complain, right? Yeah. Like, people are saying that like millennials have it easy and stuff, but actually, it maybe in some ways we do in a sense. Yeah. But there's also so much, that isn't really spoken. I mean, I guess it is spoken about, but there's a lot more to it.
Exactly.
Anyways.
Well, it's like, imagine you put all that work in, all that effort, get your degree. You're now, I mean, if you had to take out a loan, whatever, so you're like $20,000 in debt or whatever it may be. And then you can't get a job. And you're like, oh, well,
that's insanity.
Of course you're going to be frustrated. And you're like, now I have this massive debt and there's no job for me. You know what I mean? I'm not saying this happens for every kind of person, but this is the kind of trend that's happening because of this overeducated workforce, right?
Exactly.